We're going to get started here in about 3 minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get things kicked off. So if you could please go ahead and find your seats. We're going to get everything started just a few minutes late. Welcome, everybody, here this evening to the Atlanta Young Republicans. We are your 2021 Young Republican Chapter of the Year and the largest chapter in the Southeast. Yes, thank you. Thank you. We're very happy to have you all here tonight. We have a great event planned, but I want to go ahead and get through a couple of announcements because I know it gets a little crazy at the end. So I'm going to bring up our wonderful VP of Membership, Winslow Jones. If you could please come up here real quick and give us an update on what's going on in membership. Please give a round for Winslow. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I was very pleased to see so many new faces. Welcome and thank you all for coming out. All I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about benefits of a member. So first off, we have recommend is our premium membership. You have to be 18 to 40 to join as a premium member. That membership is a one-time fee that lasts until you're 41. If you're 41 or over, you can buy our emeritus membership and most of the benefits of the membership. We do offer our annual membership if you know you're only going to be here for maybe like a year and you're not sure if you want to pay the full fee. We do have that available, but we do recommend that you buy the premium, especially if you know that you're within a year and you want to stay involved. $65 for premium membership. So a few of the benefits of membership are if you sign up as a premium member or an emeritus member, you get a name badge, AWire name badge, part of the club. And you also get discounts paid events. We have about 3 or 4 paid events a year, and members get a huge discount. Usually it's about 50% off the ticket price generally. And our Christmas party, which Savannah will talk about in a second, our big party at the end of the year where we dress up, and that's members get a huge discount to that. Also, as a premium member, you can also vote and serve on the board. So this is a great opportunity to get involved with local politics, young Republican politics. It could also serve as a stepping stone if you're interested in starting a political career, and could be a stepping stone to something a little bit higher in the local Atlanta area, statewide as well. Also, I should have these memorized by now, but apparently I don't. We also this year may have a few opportunity drawings. Braves tickets being one of them. We're working on that, but only members can participate in that. Where you can put your name in, I won't say raffle, but in a jar, and we'll pull it out, and you can win some cool prizes as a member. And also, becoming a member, there's a lot of value because it increases a young millennial and Gen Z involvement, and increases support and canvassing efforts that we're going to have this year. And Savannah will talk about, and Alan will talk about some of that coming up. Our canvassing efforts during an election year like this year, and that's all in an effort to get local Republicans elected. So, and it's a social club, and it's a great place to network and meet people. I've met some of the best friends I've had in the past 2 years. I joined 2 years ago. So if you're interested, let me know. I'll be at the front after the meeting's over if you're interested in joining. $65 for premium, $40 for annual, $75 for emeritus membership. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Winslow. All right, our next speaker this evening, if y'all knew our old VP events, Matt Alvarez, he had to step away from the board, so we have appointed a new and wonderful VP of events. Please welcome Miss Savannah Davis up to the stage.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Okay, that was super lame. Okay, how are we? Yes. Okay, I love that. Okay, so coming up in this next month, we have our Summer is Brewing event in June. It's on the 9th. It's on a Thursday evening, and it's going to be at Dr. Scofflaw's from 7 to 9. I'm so excited. I hope you guys will all be there. It's going to be super fun, and I look forward to hosting many more events with you all in the future. And I'm just so thankful for this turnout. This is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So thank you for giving me your time tonight, and I'll keep it short and brief and pass it back to Alan.
Thank you, Savannah. All right, last announcement, and we're going to get on with the event. As she mentioned, and as I've mentioned in almost every meeting, we are taking an active voice in the upcoming election. We're starting this Saturday. We're going to be doing door knocking down in College Park at the RNC Black American Community Center. We're going to be there at 10 a.m. We're going to go 10 to 12. We're going to be knocking on doors. This is a nonpartisan, if you will, door knocking effort. We're not going to be trying to convince anybody to vote one way or the other. It's, hey, please show up on Tuesday and vote in the polls. If you want info on that, come find me. It's on our website. Please sign up. there will be free breakfast. So if you like donuts or Chick-fil-A, haven't decided which one, it will be there for you. So please, we'd love to have you there this weekend. Our first guest tonight is running for the United States Senate, and he actually is a young Republican, and he is a member of the Atlanta Young Republicans. Please welcome to the stage Lathan Sadler.
Alan, thank you. I'm assuming y'all are ready to knock Raphael Warnock out of that seat. Let's knock him out. Well, folks, I'm Lathan Sadler, running for U.S. Senate. I'm a proud native son of the state, was born here in Atlanta. My mother's from Bainbridge, Georgia. Went to the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. Hope we have some Bulldogs in here. And 9/11 happened while I was a student there. Maybe decided I wanted to join the military and serve as a Navy SEAL officer, and ended up spending my 20s trying to get there. Became fluent in Farsi and Dari. I backpacked through Afghanistan, did all sorts of crazy stuff, and then joined the Navy at 28. Thank God made it through SEAL training and deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and then had the good privilege of serving in the Trump White House as the Director for Intelligence Programs on the National Security Council, managing our country's Black Ops portfolio. And I can tell y'all, every single day we were up there, our adversaries feared us and respected us, and that's not the case today, and that's got to change. After 8 years on active duty, I transitioned out for pretty unique family reasons. I have a twin brother with Down syndrome who's a total stud. His name's Ashby, and he's my hero. He lives with my parents, and my dad had some health issues when I was in the teams. Thank God he's in remission now, but it woke me up to the fact that my folks aren't going to be around forever to take care of him. And so my wonderful wife over here, Melissa, and I decided that he's going to come live with us and our two young boys, Bubba and Marshall, who are 5 years old and 2 years old, and walked away from the dream job. They kept me on board the White House, now as a White House fellow, working on domestic policy issues as a civilian, and I was part of the team that got the First Step Act passed, the bipartisan criminal justice reform bill, which was a huge achievement for the Trump administration and for the country. And then after 2.5 years in the administration, we were itching to come home to raise our boys. I joined the executive team of Synovus Bank as their chief of staff, and then 2020 happens, and it starts becoming hip and cool for so much of our youth to hate the country. Constitution gets tossed out the window, and I started feeling a very similar conviction the way I felt after 9/11 to do something about it. And then, of course, we lose our 2 U.S. Senate seats, and folks started reaching out to me saying, Lathan, you've got to get in this race against Warnock, because it's going to require a next generation leader to beat him. And a number of folks pointed out that our state has a proud tradition of having a national security leader in the U.S. Senate. All the way back to Richard B. Russell, we had Sam Nunn, we had Johnny Isakson, we had Saxby, and now for the first time since World War II, we don't have a senator on the Armed Services Committee from our state, which is a huge deal given our military bases. So we ended up praying over it, exploring it, and I launched on April 15th of last year. I launched on Brett Baier. Twitter shut down my account before I even finished the interview. That's a badge of honor, but a real thing that we face as conservatives. But don't worry, Elon's gonna fix it. We're good to go. We're good to go. That's it, yeah. But I'll tell you, the response on the trail has been amazing. I mean, y'all, this should encourage y'all as fellow young Republicans. I was very self-conscious about my age coming into this. I'm 39 years old, and it turns out it's the thing that people love the most about me, more than anything in my background. There's a thirst for an ushering in of next generation leaders. We especially need it in the United States Senate, where the average age is 64 years old. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we should have leaders. I tell folks all the time, as your next United States Senator, I make a decision 3 years from now, Lord willing, let's just say I do 1 or 2 terms and I live 30, 40 years. 30 years from now, I should have to look every Georgian in the eye for a decision I make 3 years from now. And that's not the case when you have octogenarians that are up there running for another 6-year term. It's got to change. We need fresh leaders up there. So the 3 tenets of my campaign are simple: security, liberty, and prosperity. Security, I'm going to defend this country. Liberty, I'm going to defend the Constitution. And prosperity, I'm going to defend the American economy and the American worker. First, under security, y'all, I'm a national security guy. Where I was perched at the White House, I got every briefing you can get in the Situation Room on what China is doing to knock us off the block. They are hungry and focused and eager to do so. It's like we're in la-la land here in this country. And we have got to reform both the Pentagon and the intelligence community. But the fascinating thing that I learned up there is that the President of the United States can't even reform those institutions. because those bureaucracies can just outlast the presidency. But the one place you can do it is on Capitol Hill and the right committees. And in the Senate, it's the Armed Services Committee, the Select Committee on Intelligence, and the Appropriations Committee. Why? Because they control the funding and the authorities. So my wife tells me all the time, she's like, oh my gosh, you're never going to sleep again when you get up there, because I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. ready to roar to put our adversaries back on their heels where they belong. Also, we've got to secure our southern border. It goes without saying. That's going to be my top priority up there, especially now that we have a terrorist run Afghanistan and we have fentanyl coming over the border that's killing our youth more than anything else. That's security. Next, we have liberty. Probably won't shock y'all as a Navy SEAL. I own guns. I shoot guns. It's my Second Amendment right to do so, and it's yours. But who would have thought that we would live in a time where we have to worry about defending our First Amendment right of free speech in this nation? And now, I speak to conservatives all the time, but now I hear from moderates that share Lathan. I don't feel comfortable expressing my real views in this nation anymore because I'm worried the woke mob is going to come after me, my family, or my business and dox me. I didn't even know what doxing was till last year. And I'll tell y'all that those of us that fought for this country, we didn't do that to come back to a woke America where any American, and I don't care where you are politically, no American should have a fear of expressing their First Amendment right of free speech in this nation. I mean, how the heck have we gotten to this point? It's crazy, and we need leaders with a backbone to stand up to it. So that's what I'm about, security, liberty, and prosperity. The final thing I'll add is I'm up against my childhood football hero, Herschel Walker, who jumped in this arena after 3 decades in Texas, and I'm going to have to knock him out of this arena. I love Herschel just as much as any other Bulldog, but we have got to have serious leaders that show up in order to beat Raphael Warnock. I mean, and the fascinating thing about running against Herschel is he skipped all 5 of our debates and forums. They had an empty podium for him at every single one of them. Y'all, that is not going to get the job done against Raphael Warnock. We saw how good of a debater he is. We need a leader that's going to stand up and hold him accountable for the bag of goods that he sold Georgians, which is a terrorist run Afghanistan, an open southern border, and inflation that's running through the roof. So, look, I'll tell y'all, I will get up there and fight for you every single day in the Senate. The 2 things that matter in our nominee is who can beat Warnock and who's going to plug in day one to fight for our state. And y'all, I will beat Raphael Warnock, and I'm the only candidate in my race that served up there in the Trump White House advancing the America First policy agenda, which is the right agenda for the country. Georgia deserves to have that agenda back in Washington, and Georgia deserves to have a United States senator that actually has the experience at the national level advancing those policies. Y'all sent me once to fight for you in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was the honor of my life to do it, and I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for you to send me to the next battleground of Washington, D.C., so that we can get this country back on track. So please vote for me on Tuesday. Lathan Sadler and Alan, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. God bless y'all. Let's go win the country back. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lathan. We appreciate you coming, and we appreciate your membership. And that's another good plug. If you're not a member, you can be a member with a potential future United States Senator. It's pretty cool. All right, so our next guest this evening literally got on a plane and flew here from Washington, D.C. just to speak to you all this evening. That's very special. Congressman Jody Hice is a 4-term congressman representing Georgia's 10th district. Along with Congressman Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan, he was a founding member of the House Freedom Caucus. He currently serves on the House Natural Resources Committee and House Committee on Oversight and Reform, where he is currently the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Government Operations. Prior to serving in Congress, Congressman Hice was a pastor for almost 25 years, and he went on to launch his own conservative radio show program called The Jody Hice Show. He resides in Greensboro with his wife Dee Dee, and he has 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren. In March of 2021, he announced that he would challenge Brad Raffensperger in the race for Secretary of State for the state of Georgia. Please welcome to the stage Congressman Jody Hice.
Thank you, Alan. What an honor it is to be here. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I know many of you, there's a lot of other things you could be doing, places you could be, and I'm just honored to be here with you this evening. And it is true. Literally, I'm just getting here from the swamp, and I can assure you this is much better in every way than the swamp in D.C. Because, y'all, I'm telling you, we are in the fight of our life for this country, and we are in the fight of our life right here in our own state. Never has the issue of politics been more important than what it is right now. The sides are clearly defined like never before, and they are going two different directions. And at least from the perspective of Washington, D.C., I can tell you these two different worldviews cannot coexist. One or the other is going to win out. And that's what makes this particular time in our nation's history so, so important. And so I just want to give kudos and hats off to every one of you for understanding that and for engaging it right now. People ask me a lot frequently, and even some here tonight, why am I leaving Congress to run for Secretary of State? So let me just real quickly tell you how we got to this point. As Alan said, I'm in my 4th term. I'm wrapping up my 8th year in Congress. I am an original member of the House Freedom Caucus. And so we've been heavily involved on standing for conservative principles. In fact, some of you may not know, the Freedom Caucus, we kind of affectionately refer to ourselves as the Republican wing of the Republican Party in Washington. And that's really true. You just have to be there to really appreciate that. But we've been involved on the front line of so many battles for our values and what we believe as Republicans. Well, about two and a half years ago, as a member of the Oversight Committee, which I've been a part of for the entire time I've been in Washington, about 2.5 years ago, the Democrats started pushing in Oversight Committee for a federal takeover of our elections. You may have heard of bills H.R. 1, H.R. 4. Some of you may not have ever heard of those, but they were literally, our Constitution says clearly that the time, place, and manner of elections are to be left to the states and to the people thereof. It is not to the federal government to engage itself in elections. And in fact, Brad Raffensperger is one of his arguments against me is I've not passed one bill on the federal level for elections. Y'all listen, I have been fighting against those bills on the federal level because it is not constitutionally, it's not a federal issue. It's left to the states. I wish we had the time to get into why that is the case. But 2.5 years ago, the Democrats started pushing H.R. 1, just an example. H.R. 1, if passed, would require every state in the country to send live ballots to everyone on their voter registration files. 0 voter identification with any of those ballots. It would enable ballot harvesting in all of these states. It's absolutely a horrible, horrible piece of legislation. By the way, that passed the House. It passed the House. It's now sitting in the Senate. And thank God at this point, the Senate has not been able to get past cloture with it. They've not been able to move it forward because no question President Biden would sign it if that ever came to his desk. But I'm talking to you about bills that actually have passed the House of Representatives. Both H.R. 1 and 4, both have passed. So we were engaged in that battle in oversight from the very beginning, pushing back against it. In February, 2 years ago, the Democrats started kicking this whole push into high gear because of COVID. And they started saying things like, look, people are not going to be able to go to the ballot box. People are going to be afraid to get out of their homes. We must send live ballots to them. That we need to get the ballots to them. COVID is changing all the rules. And they kicked this thing into high gear. And of course, we ended up having, well, let me tell you how we get to what I was about to say. In March, 2.5 years ago, myself and every Republican member from the Georgia delegation in Washington, we got together and had a conference call with Brad Raffensperger. And in that call, we said to him, Brad, here is what the Democrats are trying to do in Washington. They're trying to take over elections. They're doing this and this and this. We were hearing rumors, and we told him, rumor is that Stacey Abrams is trying to do a similar thing in Georgia, and we urged him on that call not to send out absentee ballot requests to everyone on our voter registration file, not to do some of these things that rumors were beginning to unfold were about to take place in Georgia. It was months after that conference call that we learned that about 2 weeks before that call, Brad had already made the deal with Stacey. He never mentioned it to us. He never said a word about it, but he had already made the consent decree, the settlement agreement, whatever you want to call it, was already done before we even had that call with him. So these two things put me on the forefront of this issue of election integrity. As a leading member of the Oversight Committee, we were, and to some extent up until it passed the House, we have been heavily involved in fighting for election integrity on the federal issue. And ever since that call with Brad, we have had a heavy pulse on what was happening in Georgia. Now we fast forward, we all know Brad ended up sending out unsolicited absentee ballot requests to nearly 7 million voters in Georgia, active and inactive. He sent these out. Our voter registration files here in Georgia are in the ballpark of 10% inaccurate. So you do the math. 700 absentee ballot requests, 10%. That means we are in the ballpark of some 700,000 people in this state who received an absentee ballot request, and they don't even belong on our voter files. That is extremely problematic. And then he gives us the drop-off boxes. I hope many of you have already. If you have not, I encourage you to go watch the movie 2,000 Mules. Hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of hours of video footage of people right there participating in ballot harvesting with the very cameras, I may say, that are owned by the Secretary of State. These are the Secretary of State's cameras videoing all this stuff. And here we're a year and a half removed from the election, and Raffensperger has not even watched the films from his own cameras yet. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. But you have this unsolicited sending out of the absentee ballot request, the drop-off boxes, receiving Zuckerbucks some $50 million that Mark Zuckerberg gave to the state of Georgia. 90% of it went to tip the scales in favor of Democrat voting. I was in a movie that came out 6 weeks ago, Rigged 2020. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but it is about these Mark Zuckerberg monies. And I specifically, of course, was dealing with what happened here in Georgia with that. But well, listen, it's these type of things. It's the Dominion voting machine. It's not holding people in Fulton County accountable for the disastrous elections that they held. It's these type of things that created an absolute disaster in our election. So fast forwarding all this, the election comes. We all saw what happened. There were red flags all over the place with what happened here in Georgia. And I became, because of my involvement federally and statewide at that point, I became the go-to person for much of the media. I had nearly 200 interviews just between the presidential election and the Senate runoff. And I was the one who objected to Georgia's electoral votes in Washington. And so I kind of became the tip of the spear of this issue. And it was in the midst of all of this that someone, that I don't even remember who it was, but someone came up to me and said, Jody, you're the one who needs to challenge Brad Raffensperger. And like I said, I don't even remember who it was, but when that when that person said that, it was something just deeply resonated with me. Like, I have got to quit just talking about what happened and engage this thing and replace the one who created the problem. And so, like Lathan was saying that he did, my wife and I, we seriously prayed about this. We felt strongly this is what we were supposed to do. And I think it was the very next day, Mark Meadows called me and simply said, Jody, what are we going to do about the Secretary of State in Georgia? Somebody needs to replace him. And I just said, Brad, I think I'm the one that's got to step up to place for that. And so that's how this got it. This has never been an ambition of mine. I am in an extremely safe congressional district. Running for Secretary of State is something that's not been on my radar. But I tell you what is on my radar, folks, and I'm saying this with all the sincerity I've got. We are, and I just mentioned this a few moments ago, but we are politically speaking, this is probably the most important principle we have as a country, and that is that we are a country that is based upon the consent of the governed. Right? It is the consent of the governed, the voice of the people. And if ever at the ballot box, if ever the voice of the people is compromised or violated, then we as a nation are in serious trouble. And I deeply believe that's what happened here in Georgia in this last election. And it is that drive, that motivation that drives me to get into this. Look, the issue is not who wins an election, but the issue is absolutely, was it a fair election? Was it, but my candidate may lose, but as long as I know it's a fair election, we can go back 2 years from now and we can work like crazy and hopefully our candidate will win. But if the election itself is compromised or violated, then all the effort out there really doesn't matter anymore. And that's what we've got to defend. That's what we've got to protect at all costs. And that's why I'm in this race. I ask every one of you, I ask you for your vote. If you have not already voted, I am asking you to get out and vote for me. I am asking you for your support, to help talk it up with your neighbors, your friends, on social media, to help us with this. Just the last 10 days, Brad has put somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 million in attack ads and all this kind of stuff. And listen, we've got to push through to the very end. I'm asking for your support. And so with that, Alan, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank y'all so much for allowing me to come here for a few moments. And let's defend elections. Get out and vote on Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate it. We're going to sit down. We're going to do a couple of questions here. And then we'll, if we have time at the end, we will take some of your questions in the audience. So just be thinking about anything you'd like to ask. So the first thing I want to talk about, you spent a lot of time talking about election integrity and the election in 2020. And as much as I think all of us would like to go back in time and change the result of that election, we cannot. And here in the state of Georgia, the state legislature passed SB 202 in an effort to clean up the election process, to make it more secure. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, we made it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So what are some things that you like about SB 202, and then what are some things you don't like?
Yeah, great question. And listen, we do have, people ask me all the time, are we going to have a fair election this time? And I generally give two answers for that I believe it's going to at least be much more fair. Number one is SB 202. It is a great step in the right direction. It strengthens voter identification laws. It brings the drop-off boxes inside. It has a host of things that security paper, so we're not going to have problems with Xerox ballots and this type of stuff anymore. SB 202 has done a great job to move us in the right direction of having much more election security. The second thing that we have in our favor is we've got the eyes of the country that are watching Georgia in this election. And we also, thanks to many of you, we're going to have a whole lot more involvement as poll workers and poll watchers in every precinct across the state. And I'm telling you, the more eyes, the more boots on the ground, the more difficult it is for cheating to take place. And so, yeah, I believe we're moving in the right direction with that. Look, there are some things, obviously, that I would like to see change with SB 202. I think we ought to eliminate drop-off boxes altogether. I think the voters of Georgia have lost. Thank you. I think the voters of Georgia have, by and large, lost confidence in the Dominion voting machines. that is reason enough that Dominion machines need to go. So there are things like this that there's still work to be done, but we'll be moving in that direction. But Alan, let me just close with this. Y'all remember all the accusations about SB 202, that it was nothing but voter suppression and all this kind of stuff. We are right now having record voter turnout, which totally dismantles the false argument that SB 202 is going to suppress voters. We are 3 and 4 times more early voting than we have had in the past, shattering all the previous records. So don't let anybody continue saying Georgia voting laws are involved in voter suppression. Just the opposite. It's just what you said, Alan. SB 202 has made it easier to vote, as is evidenced by the mass turnout that we're having right now, and it's going to make it harder to cheat.
One quick poll since everybody's here. Raise your hand if you've already voted. All right, and then raise your hand so I can see everybody's hands if you are voting on election day. Interesting. All right, so that's probably 50-50 or so. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. So walk us through day one. You're elected. You're the new Secretary of State for the state of Georgia. On day one, what is the very first thing that you're going to do?
Well, listen, the first thing is very obvious. You've got to have the right staff. Right now, the Secretary of State's office is massively understaffed. If you call the Secretary of State's office right now, you will not even talk to a person. It will be one automated conversation after another, and eventually you will more than likely never hear back from a live person. The same is true if you shoot an email. You're not going to hear a reply back. So look, one of the things that I've been extremely successful in my past, but also in Washington, is putting together a staff that is able to respond to the needs of the people. Our congressional district has in the ballpark 750,000 people. Now, so many of them. We have over 1,000 calls, emails, messages, visits every single week. And by law, I'm only allowed to have 18 staff. And that includes my legislative staff, who's keeping me informed on what we're voting on. It includes people who are keeping up. Here's one, Mark. Mark has done everything from constituent services to now he's out on the field. He literally is all throughout one of our 25 counties all the time, being at Rotary meetings. So I am only allowed in DC and in the district a maximum of 18 people. But we have the reputation of being one of the greatest offices in the country for responding to people, for having open door policies. Look, right now, if anyone texts me, they're going to get a text back most of the time in a matter of minutes. The same is going to happen if they get a phone call. We are so accessible, absolutely opposite from the current Secretary of State in the way they do business. But so the staffing is number one. And once you have the staffing in place, understand there are two primary jobs, more than two, but two primary jobs, Secretary of State. Number one, election integrity, defending our elections. Number two, business licensing and registration of corporations and that type of thing in the state. Here we are, the number one state in the country to do business, but our licensing department, likewise, it's just a train wreck. We have businesses by the hundreds who renewed their license months ago, way before it was due, and here they are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, they still don't have a business license renewed. If we're going to remain the number one state for business, then we have got to make it easy and accessible for businesses to do the job that they do safely and as unencumbered of a way as possible. So it's managing both of these two sides. Many of the things on the election things I've already mentioned are obviously things that we will begin the process on day one. Obviously, those things will take months and months to accomplish. But cleaning our voter files, all this kind of stuff, has to begin on day one.
Awesome. So similarly, kind of on election process, in November of 2020, David Perdue received more votes than any Republican in the state of Georgia ever. But he is not a United States Senator today because we have runoffs in the state of Georgia. What are your thoughts on potentially getting rid of runoffs here in the state of Georgia?
Well, to be very honest with you, my opinion is meaningless. This is a decision that's made by the General Assembly. Keep in mind, and this is a little bit of a transition for me, but I believe also a benefit. The Secretary of State is not a part of the legislative branch. It's part of the executive branch. Of course, you know, we have three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. And currently, I'm a legislator. So I go to battle every day in Washington trying to protect against horrible legislation and trying to advance good legislation. And but the Secretary of State is only there to enforce the laws that the General Assembly creates. So there is zero authority for the Secretary of State to go in and start changing laws and doing all this type of stuff. All he can do is enforce the laws that come from the General Assembly. That said, and I believe this is a great benefit for me, as Secretary of State, if the voters of Georgia entrust me with this office, I will be a Secretary of State who goes there with a legislative agenda. Although understanding I'm not a legislator, I'll certainly have a legislative agenda, meaning you go there with a full understanding of some changes that need to take place at SB 202, of the necessity, the need for us to get out of this contract with Dominion voting machine that requires the General Assembly to break the contract and all this kind. So you go there with a legislative agenda to continue strengthening our voter integrity, defending and protecting the voice of the people at the ballot box, strengthening our businesses to be able to do what they do best. And all of that requires legislation from the General Assembly. So working with them, building relationships, entrusting time with them to help move the ball forward in behalf of our entire state is what we'll do.
This will be my last question. We'll open up the floor. Kind of similar question, I think, similar process. But I don't know if y'all saw this, but there was an article in the AJC, I guess it was like 3 or 4 days ago, that said that there's a record number of not registered Democrats, but just previously voting Democrats who are voting in the Republican primary this year. And for those of you who don't know, you don't register as Republican or Democrat. You just show up at the poll and you say, hey, I want a Republican or a Democrat ballot. Do you think that we should change the process to require you to register for a party when you register to vote, and therefore, you know, not letting people just choose to vote in our primary?
Yeah, again, look, especially, I believe that in the primary process, right? I mean, primaries are there for each party to determine who their candidate is going to be for the general election. And so Republicans should not be voting in Democrat primaries, nor should Democrats be voting in Republican primaries. These are designed for the two parties to determine who their candidates are going to be. So yeah, look, I've seen the same articles, and we've been watching this and trying to keep a pulse on it. Yeah, there's always this threat that this type of thing is going to happen. It always does happen to a certain degree, but I think if we're going to strengthen anything when it comes to primary elections, I think this is something. If you're going to vote Republican here, then I mean, or Democrat, whatever, we need to safeguard the party's rights to elect their own candidates as much as possible, and try not to let the opposite parties interfere with that. I think looking at debating, working through some options that would strengthen that, I think would be healthy for both parties.
I definitely don't think a bunch of Democrats woke up and decided that they wanted to be Republicans overnight. That would be great, though. Maybe that's true. Maybe we'll see a big surprise. Okay, well, we do have time for a few questions from the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Yes.
You mean, what is he attacking me about, or what's? Yeah, listen, politics has become very dirty these days, and it's a brutal. Y'all, this is it's certainly not a no contact sport, if you will. It's full contact, and it's pretty vicious, and it's not fun. I mean, look, it's not enjoyable to go through the attacks, and especially when they're just they're not true. But it is what it is. I can't change that. I can't change what Brad is attacking and what he's saying, even about himself. I'm sure some of y'all have seen his ads. He's literally saying that he stopped ballot harvesting. Well, there are 2 movies about this with video footage of it happening, and Brad has the gall to go on TV and radio and printed mail pieces saying he put a stop to ballot harvesting in Georgia. Y'all, he created ballot harvesting in Georgia by his horrible leadership. That is the truth. And he's claiming that he put a stop to non-Americans voting in Georgia. It has always been illegal for non-citizens of this country to vote in Georgia. He has done nothing to do this. It's always been law, but he is also saying that he wrote SB 202. SB 202 came about because he miserably failed to protect our elections, and the General Assembly came to the plate to try to secure our elections that he dropped the ball on. So, I guess when you come to politics, people can say whatever they want to say. He's claiming that I got kicked off the Armed Services Committee because I was a horrible member of Congress and incompetent. No, I got kicked off of Armed Services Committee. That's true, and that was painful. But I got kicked off of Armed Services because I voted against Kevin McCarthy to be our leader, and I was punished for doing so. But in doing so, I stood up to leadership, unlike Brad Raffensperger, who absolutely caved to Stacey Abrams. And look, there's consequences when you take a stand, and trust me, I got a lot of scars to prove that over the years. But when it comes down to it, people have to believe whatever you're going to believe. And unfortunately, we live in a time where you are bombarded with 2 opposing views on everything, and you are stuck in the middle trying to discern what's true, what's accurate, what's not. It is such an unfair position for our voters to be in, and I greatly resent that in behalf of everybody. But I'm telling you the truth here tonight, so hope you'll trust me.
I've just been informed we can't take any more questions. We're running out of time. I'm sorry, but I do have one follow-up question just came up to me, so I'm going to cut in line. I'm sorry. But you mentioned that there's a couple movies that have come out about the voter fraud. And so I guess my question, so we're now this is May of 2022, the election was in 2020, and we're just now getting to see a lot of these movies in this country. Obviously, you're innocent until proven guilty. So in the future, how do you plan to speed up the process of investigating, claims that nefarious things, might have happened? I mean, obviously, there's a tight window to certify an election. We can't, investigate all these things in, however many days it is. So what's your plan to kind of speed up that process?
Alan, great question. Most people are not aware of this, but the Secretary of State's office has, as it relates to election integrity, has a robust investigative team. They have the right and the responsibility when there are allegations of voter fraud, of irregularities, or whatever problems there are with the voting process, it is the responsibility of the Secretary of State to investigate those claims. And that office has a robust investigative team. And what they do, you send out investigators, you find out what happened, and then you determine were there criminal prosecutions, is there a need for criminal prosecutions, civil prosecutions, was there just human error, and you deal with it. The investigative team makes all these determinations, and then the Secretary of State, according to the investigation, makes a criminal referral to the appropriate judge or court, or a civil prosecution to the Attorney General, or whatever the case may be. Unfortunately, Brad Raffensperger has not done this, so SB 202 now has included the GBI to have the authority to investigate election fraud, because Brad did not do his job. And he has the funding and the ability and the responsibility to investigate and make referrals one way or the other. And in not doing so, the GBI now has the authority to do that as well, which is probably not a bad thing. If you have a Secretary of State refusing to do their job, at least now there is a backdrop, someone else who can do it. But that's the process. And to speed things up, look, if I'm Secretary of State, I am running for this purpose, to defend and protect our elections. And listen, we will be utilizing to the fullest extent needed and possible the investigative authority that this office has to not only to investigate and find, but indeed to refer criminal prosecution to people who violate our election laws. If there are no consequences for breaking the law and cheating, people will continue to cheat when it comes to elections. There must be consequences, and that is the responsibility of the Secretary of State's office. And I commit that we will utilize to the fullest extent possible the investigative authority we have and the authority to make criminal or civil prosecution referrals.
Thank you so much for coming down here from the swamp. We appreciate it. Please give it up for Congressman Jody Hice for coming out this evening. Let me just say one couple quick things. And yeah, one quick closing things I want to mention. This Saturday, again, we're going to have Get Out the Vote effort. If you want information on that, come find me. Go to our website. From 10 to 12, we're going to be door knocking in College Park. There will be free food. Again, June social is going to be June 9th at Dr. Scofflaw's at the Works. That's like maybe 5 minutes from here, so we're going to stick around in this area. And then last thing, speaker and location, everything to be determined. But June 23rd, it's our normal Thursday meeting, will be next month. So please mark your calendars, June 23rd. We will have some correspondence going out in a couple of weeks or so or less to give you an update on who's going to be speaking at that. But thank you all so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Please give one more round of applause to both of our speakers, Congressman Jody Hice and Lathan Sadler. Thank you all for coming. If you're on the board, if you could please come up here, we're going to do a couple of quick board photos. Thank you so much.